The only megacity in the western United States has an ideal climate and a history of development based uniquely on vehicle mobility. There's no place quite like it on Earth. A powerful trendsetter, this diverse, beautiful city is one of the most recognizable on the planet. Arguably the most influential and successful urban area of the 1900s. Its population grew from 100,000 to more than 15 million in just over a century. But this amazing boom favored some much more than others, and has required a re-engineering of the natural environment on a scale previously unseen in human history. This is Los Angeles, California's megacity. Close to the beach, but not directly on the coast, the area along the Los Angeles River was home to the Chumash and Tongva indigenous peoples when it was claimed in 1781 by Spain, who recruited 11 families to come from what is now the state of Sinaloa in Mexico. These 44 people, a majority of whom were of African descent, founded the Spanish Empire's second town in California, El Pueblo de Los Angeles. It was still a small settlement 40 years later, when it came under the control of a Mexican government that was fresh off gaining independence from Spain. The Catholic mission system was out, replaced by the cattle-raising culture of wealthy rancheros. But just a few years later, the United States won the Mexican-American War, and in 1848, California officially became a U.S. territory. The discovery of gold in the north grabbed headlines across the country. With people rushing in from all over and lawlessness running rampant, residents badly wanted the stability that came with official American statehood. But before the U.S. Congress could act, the delegates at California's Constitutional Convention took it upon themselves to settle the two most vexing issues facing any aspiring state at that time. First, they decided what their own borders would be, and second, on the slavery question, voted unanimously to join the Union as a free state. Congress was so eager to gain such a vast area rich in resources and extend the Union across the continent to the Pacific that they accepted the Californians' terms and granted them statehood in record time as part of the Compromise of 1850. With its broader security and governance issues settled, the humble settlement on the Los Angeles River quickly grew into a city of more than 100,000 by 1900. This population explosion was in part thanks to the construction of two major railways, the Transcontinental connecting LA to San Francisco, and the Santa Fe between LA and Chicago, allowing easier long-distance ground transport of both passengers and goods. One of the main industries drawing workers to Los Angeles was petroleum. By 1923, California was the country's largest oil producer and accounted for 1/4 of the entire world's output. Film production was also taking off. Sunny Hollywood allowed for year-round shooting. By 1921, all the major studios were based in LA and had a monopoly, with 80% of the world's films made there. The other industry that California is perfect for is agriculture. And by the first half of the 20th century, Los Angeles County was among the most valuable croplands in America. There was just one thing holding the region back. Its Mediterranean ecology didn't provide enough water. So in 1907, LA voters approved a bond measure to begin construction of an aqueduct to bring water south from the Owens Valley, 233 miles away. This deal was highly controversial, and some desperate farmers whose fields were suddenly dry used violence in vain to disrupt the aqueduct. But it was no use. LA's thirst would be quenched. This compelled many adjacent cities and communities to join Los Angeles to gain access to its water, including the valuable seaport of Wilmington and San Pedro, absorbed by LA in 1909. Between 1910 and 1940, LA incorporated Hollywood, the San Fernando Valley, and many other areas. Securing a reliable water source for a population of millions enabled the city of Los Angeles to expand its borders. But it was a confluence of additional factors that took the growth of the entire region to a whole other level, quickly transforming the basin into the thriving, sprawling, one-of-a-kind megacity that is modern LA. The sheer amount of land available to develop played a major role.
If you think about Manhattan Island and the narrowness of that piece of land, or even San Francisco as a peninsula, Los Angeles has those natural boundaries in the mountains and the ocean, but the scale's much, much bigger.
Prior to 1900, most Angelenos got around on foot or by horse-drawn carriage. To paint this picture, here's Belle Collins, who grew up in 1880s Los Angeles.
Main Street had a sidewalk which was wooden. It was just wooden planks laid down, and it was all unpaved and dusty in the summer and frightfully muddy in the winter.
Around the turn of the 20th century, Los Angeles underwent a transportation revolution. The electrified trolley, also known as the streetcar or intra-urban, was fast, cheap, and reliable, and it carried passengers up off of those dirty, bumpy roads. One man in particular had just the right combination of experience in the railroad industry and money to transform the entire region.
Those trolley speculators that predate Huntington, they build trolleys between a fixed point, town A, and a fixed point, town B, because there's a demand for what can traffic between those two towns. That's logical. Huntington has so much wealth, he doesn't need the other town yet.
He would build lines to nowhere and then create a name and a sign, and then followed up by building a community in these areas that had available access to public transit.
By the 1920s, Greater Los Angeles had the largest streetcar system in the world. 1,100 miles of line connected hundreds of small cities, towns, and villages into a vast network.
The ability to get on a trolley and travel across this basin inexpensively and efficiently worked for decades and decades.
Ironically, the popularity of the streetcar helped to hasten its downfall. As the system grew in size, it became more complex and congested. As privately owned enterprises, lines weren't consistently maintained the way public mass transit was in other big cities. And as passengers suffered more frequent delays, they watched in envy as the latest innovation in transportation zipped all around them. The arrival of the mass production automobile meant liberation from the tyranny of the fixed track. You went wherever you wanted, whenever you wanted. The Great Depression also affected the development of Los Angeles.
In 1934, all of the new homes built in the United States were worth only $227 million, a decline of 92% from 1928.
To jumpstart the economy as part of his New Deal, President Roosevelt and a democratically controlled Congress created the Federal Housing Administration. The FHA provided mortgage insurance to protect lenders from losses when a homeowner defaults on their mortgage. This eliminated one of the riskiest parts of lending, so banks could offer home loans to many more buyers and on much more affordable terms. It's hard to overstate how important the FHA was and continues to be in supporting home building in America. Think about this. Before the FHA, you needed to put down half as a down payment to buy a home, instead of the 10 to 20% that's now standard. And the repayment schedule was spread out over just 3 to 5 years. It's no wonder then that before the FHA, just 1 in 10 American households owned the home they lived in, and that 65 years after the FHA was created, over 68% did. This had a huge impact in Los Angeles, with so much available land to build on. And with the dream of owning a detached home within reach for middle-class workers in LA's booming aircraft, rubber, automotive, and oil industries, the population of the county surpassed 2 million before the Second World War. The affordability of the San Fernando Valley was particularly appealing, and it became the fastest growing region in the United States, doubling in population in the 1940s and then doubling again in the 1950s to over 700,000 people. On the other side of LA, a preview of the suburban home building style now familiar to anyone living in an American city was launched in Lakewood, or what was known as Tomorrow's City today. Every day, 4,000 workers completed at least 50 homes in a giant outdoor assembly line. That was roughly one dwelling completed every 10 minutes. Unfortunately, the FHA did much more than trigger a housing construction boom. By only ensuring a certain type of home, it shaped what kinds of houses would be built, where they would be constructed, and even who would buy them. It prioritized detached, new-built houses on wide streets and cul-de-sacs, preferring expansiveness over density, and favored places near arterial roads rather than public transit. As a federal agency operating at the height of the Cold War, the FHA was not immune to issues of national security. Los Angeles was then the center of a booming military and aviation tech industry, a hub for the likes of Lockheed Aircraft Corporation, which theoretically made it a target for Soviet missile strikes. One way to protect American assets from nuclear catastrophe, the thinking went, was to physically increase the size of the target by encouraging residents to move away from city centers. This little-known policy of defensive dispersal was quite literally a national security effort to incentivize suburban sprawl through affordable home loans. By the mid-1950s, planned communities spreading for miles around downtown LA were dominated by an ever-expanding network of charming ranch-style bungalows. Reportedly, the home design that best withstood nuclear blasts. The FHA's policies also excluded Americans of color, by design, by refusing to insure mortgages in racially mixed neighborhoods. As whites left America's cities in droves for the brand new suburbs, minorities were sidelined in less desirable multi-family urban dwellings.
The racism was very blatant. It's a white man's neighborhood. That's how these tracts were sold. So this was the reason why you saw restrictive covenants, things of this nature. It was to go along with that California myth that this was the new white utopia.
All this was going on as 5 million African Americans were moving from the Jim Crow South to cities in the Northeast, Midwest, and West. By 1960, the FHA had underwritten tens of millions of mortgages on new houses worth a total of $120 billion, but just 2% of these loans went to non-whites. Even though this type of discrimination is now illegal, its lasting effects have reduced generational wealth and educational opportunities in communities of color. Another development that has dramatically changed life in Los Angeles has been the freeway. In the 1940s and 50s, the volume of traffic and intersections, combined with the size of the region, meant trips by car were taking longer and longer. The freeway allowed for high-speed, non-stop travel over greater distances, but it came at a high cost: the decimation of neighborhoods mostly home to lower-income and minority families. The Mexican-American community of Boyle Heights had wide swaths demolished to make room for multiple freeways and interchanges, while only one freeway was planned in white, wealthy Beverly Hills, until even it was stopped by local protests and has never been built. The construction of freeways also meant the continued expansion of development, creating even greater demand for water from ever more distant sources, culminating in one of the most audacious megaprojects in human history, the State Water Project, or SWP, launched in the 1960s.
There is no other project in the history of the United States where a state has put in such a large contribution to the development of its own resources and where the national government has joined with the state. This has brought your state to be the pioneer in the United States in the field of development and conservation of our natural resources. California in this area is number one.
The SWP's 21 dams and more than 700 miles of canal, pipeline, and tunnel are now the lifeblood of modern California. The project delivers water to over 750,000 acres of farmland and 25 million people. Many reservoirs and pumping stations keep the flow going, none more important than the motors that haul water up an astounding 2,882 feet over the Tehachapi Mountains, the largest water lifting system in the world, so it can flow down into the LA basin. All this means Greater Los Angeles now covers more than 33,000 square miles, the largest metropolitan region by land area in the United States. Its economy is ranked third in the world, behind just Tokyo and New York City. And it's the main reason why California is America's largest state by both population and GDP. In fact, if California were a country of its own, its economy would rank 5th in the world. Los Angeles is also often billed as the creative capital of the world because 1 in every 6 residents does work related to the arts. There are more writers, filmmakers, actors, dancers, and musicians in Los Angeles than in any other city on our planet. But for all its successes, it has its share of problems. Air quality can be notoriously bad, though it has improved as cars, trucks, and energy sources have become more efficient. To solve its worst-in-the-nation traffic, it continues to build out its light rail and bus rapid transit systems. Now it needs to focus on increasing density right around them.
Each rail line that comes into operation, it just exponentially boosts all the other ones. But I think the next stage for LA really shouldn't be about more rail lines. It ought to be about taking advantage of the rail lines that are already here and making sure that there's more apartment buildings built around the rail lines, more jobs located there, and really just building up the communities around it, because that's how we get the ridership and the real benefit out of the rail lines.
Despite being one of the most expensive real estate markets in America, Los Angeles accounts for 37% of California's lowest income residents. With median home prices over $800,000 and affordable rental stock dwindling to less than 1 rental for every 5 extremely low-income households, it's no wonder why LA has over 66,000 homeless citizens. And many of those who can afford rent don't get much for their money. With one of the nation's worst rates of residential overcrowding, 11% of Angelenos rent rooms shared by multiple occupants. Some Angelenos are tackling this by building accessory dwelling units to create more housing on existing lots. A new state program even provides up to $25,000 in grants for homeowners to put one up.
So this used to be actually a driveway that went all the way through, and there was a garage back there. So we just tore down the garage and we built the house in its place. It's a phenomenal thing. You could build a second house on every single yard in Los Angeles, as far as I can tell. So I'd much rather have a house than to have a place for my car.
But despite its increasing density, Greater LA continues to sprawl deeper into dry, windy, hilly areas, heightening the threat of fast-moving, hard-to-stop wildfires and mudslides. More extreme weather is making them more destructive. With longer-lasting droughts, drinking water supplies are threatened as reservoirs and rivers now routinely run dangerously low. As yearly snowfall in the Sierras continues to decline, Los Angeles must turn to innovative measures to save water any way it can. The most effective way to do this is water recovery. Orange County, just to the south of LA, has been operating a successful system since 2008.
Potable reuse is where you take recycled water, gets pumped into a groundwater basin, referred to as an environmental buffer, and then into the potable distribution system. We've expanded from 70 million gallons a day to 100 million gallons per day. It's the purest water that we have in Southern California.
It's an incredible, valuable resource. The political problem is convincing people that wastewater isn't a bad thing, it's a good thing.
It's actually cleaner than the water we get from the Colorado or from Northern California. In fact, you even need to add some minerals to it because it's so pure.
The Colorado River goes through people's kidneys many times before it gets to the point where it's diverted to Southern California. So everybody in Southern California today drinks recycled sewer water.
The Los Angeles region is only planning to recycle enough water to serve less than 10% of its people. But if the majority of California's wastewater was recycled, it could produce water for 30 million residents. This would allow expensive and environmentally harmful solutions like ocean desalination plants and the building of additional dams and aqueducts to become solutions of last resort. Another antiquated idea is wasting water to irrigate grass, which accounts for nearly half of urban water use in Southern California. Programs to incentivize residents to switch to natural landscaping resulted in the removal of more than 200 million square feet of irrigated lawn in the last period of mandatory water restrictions. California's network of emergency management agencies are already under intense pressure to prepare for imminent environmental disasters, with the most difficult being the big one. The earthquake everyone knows is coming, but are powerless to stop. According to the USGS, California currently has a 99% chance of at least one 6.7 or greater magnitude quake in the next 30 years. A 6.6 mag in 1971 killed 65 people and caused over $500 million in damage. This motivated the state to update building codes and retrofit older structures, but even with these improvements, a high magnitude quake in the network of faults that runs beneath downtown LA would likely have devastating effects on citywide infrastructure, rupturing gas lines, downing power lines, sparking fires, cutting off water, and making many roads and freeways impassable. But these threats are unlikely to change the fact that, for many, LA is the most desirable place to live in the entire world. The advantage this megacity has to attract the world's best and brightest will continue. The question is whether Los Angeles can reverse its troubling slide toward economic inequality and remain a global beacon of opportunity and tolerance for all. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to get the next episode in this series, a profile of Kinshasa, Congo. And if you missed it, we looked at Shanghai last time. And a special thanks to LA's KCET, the best channel I've ever come across covering a single region, and to Ben Wilson and his book Metropolis.